Orange unveiled their first bike with the Alpine name in 2009. It had 160mm of travel and was designed to be a do-it-all, go-anywhere, hardcore bash and smash machine. After being called the Alpine 160 for the majority of its life, in 2017 Orange dropped the 160 name and changed it to the Alpine 6. This was to fit more in line with the rest of their range that relate to numbers, like the Orange 4, the Orange 5 and now the Orange Alpine 6. With the new name back in 2017 came some impressive but important refinements. Now Orange are releasing the new Alpine 6 model and it's built upon these refinements. The bike isn't a revolutionary change, it's more of an evolutionary progression of what Orange thought needed doing to address some issues. At the top of the list of changes that Orange have made to the new Alpine 6 are geometry alterations. And it comes as no surprise that the bike has become longer, lower and slacker. Compared to the previous model, the new Alpine 6 across all sizes gets a 6mm longer reach, 11.3mm longer chainstays and 5mm of more travel up to 165mm. The pivot is also 10mm wider in total, which is 5mm on each side. The bottom bracket has also dropped by 5mm. The BB drop, which is measured from the axles, has also increased to 17mm. Now this should make the bike corner like it's on rails. The bike's now got a slacker 64-degree head angle from 65 degrees, but the seat tube angle remains unchanged at 74 degrees. Now that's not particularly steep and there'll be more on that later. The biggest thing you'll notice about Orange's new Alpine 6 is the inclusion of a bottle cage mount. Now, Orange couldn't work out how to put the bottle cage mounts inside the front triangle, so what they've done is hang it on the bottom of the down tube close to the bottom bracket. The main pivot location sits 10mm lower compared to the previous bike. However, it is only 5mm closer to the bike's chain line because the bottom bracket has also dropped by 5mm. Orange have also worked incredibly hard at reducing their anti-squat figures. Uncompressed, in a 50-tooth cassette ring and a 34-tooth chainring, anti-squat is 137%. At 30% sag, this number decreases slightly to 133.9%. Because the bike's pivot is now 5mm away from the chainline, which is closer than before, Orange state that the bike has 1.5 degrees less pedal kickback at bottom out. To find out more about anti-squat and other suspension characteristics, check out Seb's suspension guide. The link is in the video description. Spec highlights for the model that I rode, which was the Alpine 6 factory, include a Fox factory 36 fork with a Grip 2 damper that's mated to a Fox X2 float rear shock. The bike's got Stan's Flow Mark III rims with a 29mm internal width. These are wrapped in Maxxis Minion DHF and DHR2 rubber. Orange have spec'd Hope's Tech 3 E4 brakes with a 200mm front rotor and 180mm rear rotor. The drivetrain's a real mix of SRAM's X01, GX and Descendant Eagle 12-speed kit. Orange took us to Punta Rala, which hosted one of the first ever Enduro World Series races. For those of you that love the way Orange's ride, nothing has changed with the new Alpine 6. It's still got an inherently poppy, fun and lively ride, and the bike gives back as much as you put in. Although Orange have slightly lowered their anti-squat figures, I didn't think that the bike climbed any worse than the previous model. And just like the old bike, I didn't really think the bike needed its lockout climb lever on the shock. In fact, that climb lever is pretty aggressive, and I found that it had much better grip and more comfort with it off on the climbs. Generally speaking though, this bike is suited to a winch and descend style of riding, with the focus being more on the downhills. With that in mind, it's interesting to see that Orange have decided to run a 74-degree seat angle. Whilst the 74-degree seat angle isn't especially slack, I did find that I had to make some setup changes to help improve the ride. For my tastes, I had to put the seat as far forward in the rails as possible and angle the nose down. This really improved my seated climbing comfort. It's great to see that Orange have finally included a bottle mount on their bike. It is a shame, however, that they put it on the bottom of the bike's down tube. This bottle location does mean that it's exposed to loads of crap coming off your back wheel, flying directly into the bottle's teat. It is possible to buy bottles with teat covers, but it's nice to not have to think about these things. The bottle's location also means that you have to consider the type of cage and type of bottle that you're buying. If you've got a plastic cage and a slightly smaller bottle, the likelihood of it flying out is quite high. Out of the 7 riders at the press camp, I was the only one to lose the bottle, but this could potentially happen to anyone. The new Alpine 6's party piece though is how it descends, and the bike has an incredibly capable and bottomless feeling ride that's really hard to overwhelm no matter how rowdy you're getting. The factory spec tune, inclusion of bottom out spacers and the bike's inherent suspension kinematics mean that the Fox Float X2 and rear suspension has loads of great bottom out resistance and mid-stroke support. Despite the new bike's increased reach, wheelbase and chainstay figures, it still has an unmistakably orange feel to it. It generates speed and gives as much back as you put in, as long as you're riding proactively. The Alpine 6 certainly rewards rider input, but as soon as you become slobby, lazy, or stop concentrating, the bike isn't as forgiving as other models and other brands out there. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does take some time and persistence to master the way that the bike rides to get the most from it. Earlier on, I mentioned the lower bottom bracket, and it's certainly true that this new bike does corner like it's on rails. Couple that with the fantastic mid-stroke support given by Fox's X2 damper, and there's loads to push against in turns. This means that you can ride and rail turns like an absolute hero. Although the Fox 36 and X2 dampers are critically acclaimed and well matched to each other, I don't think that Orange's chassis relies entirely on their damping prowess. I'd wager that with the right setup and the appropriate number of bottom out tokens, a lower spec damper would feel just as good with this chassis. Considering the Orange Alpine 6 factory's price tag of £5,800, it comes as no surprise that I had almost zero complaints about the way this bike's spec'd. My only gripe was with Hope's Tech 3 E4 brakes. When stationary on the bike with the brakes engaged, there's quite a lot of backwards and forwards rock. The pads are ever so slightly too small for the space in the caliper. This means that with the brake locked on, it's possible to rock the bike backwards and forwards. While this doesn't translate to any particularly horrible feelings out on the trail, it is a little bit off-putting, and for something that costs so much, you'd expect the tolerances to be a bit better. Overall, I loved riding Orange's new Alpine 6, and the bike has some brilliant, poppy and fun qualities that really stand out. To get the most from this bike though, you've got to be on the ball, and it certainly complements a specific riding style. It still retains Orange's famous ride characteristics that reward those who are most proactive at finding speed, choosing lines and pumping the trail. Do you think the new Alpine 6 sounds like something you'd enjoy riding? Or do you think Orange need to go back to the drawing board and rethink the way their Alpine 6 rides? Let us know what you think in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe.